In recent days, Inmarsat developed a second innovative technique which considers the velocity of the aircraft relative to the satellite. Depending on this relative movement, the frequency received and transmitted will differ from its normal value, in much the same way that the sound of a passing car changes as it approaches the end and passes by. This is called the Doppler effect. The Inmarsat technique analyzes the difference between frequency that the ground station expects to receive and one that is actually measured. This difference is the result of the Doppler effect and is known as the burst frequency offset. The burst frequency offset changes depending on the location of the aircraft on an arc of possible positions, its direction of travel, and its speed. In order to establish confidence in its theory, Inmarsat checked its predictions using information obtained from 6 other B777 aircraft flying on the same day in various directions. There was good agreement. While on the ground at Kuala Lumpur Airport and during the early stage of the flight, MH370 transmitted several messages. At this stage, the location of the aircraft and the satellite were known, so it was possible to calculate system characteristics for the aircraft, satellite, and the ground station. During the flight, the ground station logged the transmitted and received pulse frequency at each handshake. Knowing the system characteristics and position of the satellite, it was possible, considering aircraft performance, to determine where on each arc the calculated burst frequency offset fits best. The analysis showed poor correlation with the northern corridor, but good correlation with the southern corridor. And depending on the ground speed of the aircraft, it was then possible to estimate the position at 0011 UTC, at which the last complete handshake took place. I must emphasize that this is not the final position of the aircraft. There is evidence of a partial handshake between the aircraft and the ground station at 0019 UTC. At this time, this transmission is not understood and is subject to further ongoing work. No response was received from the aircraft at 0115 UTC, when the ground earth station sent the next log-on, log-off message. This indicates that the aircraft was no longer logged on to the network. Therefore, sometime between 0011 UTC and 0115 UTC, the aircraft was no longer able to communicate with the ground station. This is consistent with the maximum endurance of the aircraft. This analysis by Inmarsat forms the basis for further study to attempt to determine the final position of the aircraft. Accordingly, the Malaysian investigation has set up an international working group comprising of agencies with expertise in satellite communication and aircraft performance to take this work forward. The new analysis I have described was convincing enough for the AAIB to brief the Prime Minister that MH370 flew along the southern corridor, and that its last position was in the middle of the Indian Ocean west of Perth.